never thought much about how my parents treated my daughter Emma differently until that dinner. Growing up as an only child, I didn't have siblings to compare myself to, but I always felt like I was never quite enough for my parents, especially my mother. When I had Emma at 23, Mom said I was throwing my life away, even though I was already married to Mark and had finished college with honors. My mother's disapproval became the backdrop of my adult life, but I kept trying to win her approval, like I'd been doing since childhood. I remember bringing home straight A's in middle school and high school, hoping for just a smile, maybe a good job. But Mom would glance at my report card and ask why I wasn't involved in more extracurricular activities like my cousin Lily. When I made the volleyball team, she questioned why I wasn't the captain. When I got into college with a partial scholarship, she wondered aloud why it wasn't a full ride. Nothing was ever enough. Mark noticed it early in our relationship. After our third date, he met my parents for dinner and afterward asked me, "Does your mom always criticize you like that?" I remember being surprised by the question. I was so used to her behavior that I didn't even notice it anymore. It was just the way things were between us. 6 months ago, my parents moved closer to us after Dad retired from his accounting job of 30 years. Mom suggested monthly family dinners at their new house, and I was hopeful this meant a fresh start. They'd bought a beautiful colonial-style home in a neighborhood just 15 minutes from ours. Maybe the change of scenery would shift something in our relationship too. My younger cousin Lily and her son Noah were invited to these dinners as well, as they lived in the same city. Lily was always the favorite niece, the one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. Growing up, Lily would visit during summers, and I'd watch as my mother showered her with attention, compliments, and gifts. "Why can't you be more outgoing like Lily?" Mom would ask me. Or, "Look how nicely Lily dresses. You could learn something from her." The first few family dinners went fine. There was tension, but nothing I wasn't used to. My mother would make subtle comments about Emma's grades or her appearance, while praising Noah for every little thing. Emma, now 12, never complained, but I could see the hurt in her eyes when her grandmother barely acknowledged her achievements. "Did you see Noah's science project won first place?" Mom would gush, while completely ignoring that Emma had made the honor roll. Again. Or she'd say, "Noah is getting so tall and handsome," without commenting on how Emma had blossomed into such a beautiful young girl, with her father's kind eyes and warm smile. During the second dinner, I noticed how Emma had prepared a short piano piece to play for my parents. She'd been taking lessons for 3 years and had practiced this song for weeks. When she asked if she could play it after dinner, my mother checked her watch and said, "Maybe next time, dear. Your grandfather wants to watch his program." I saw the disappointment flash across Emma's face before she composed herself and nodded politely. "Okay, Grandma. Maybe next time." Later that night, I found her in her room, not crying, just sitting on her bed with a resigned look that broke my heart. When I asked if she was okay, she just shrugged and said, "It's fine, Mom. I'm used to it. Used to it." The words echoed in my head, but I pushed them away. I didn't want to acknowledge what they really meant. Last Sunday was the third family dinner. As we pulled up to my parents' house in our blue sedan, Mark squeezed my hand. "You okay?" he asked. He knew these dinners were stressful for me. The way his forehead creased with concern made me feel seen in a way my parents never made me feel. "I'm fine," I said, plastering on a smile I didn't feel. "Let's just get through this." I checked my lipstick in the visor mirror, making sure I looked presentable. Mom always noticed if I didn't put in enough effort with my appearance. Emma was quiet in the back seat. She'd spent the morning helping Mark fix the bathroom sink, learning how to use tools, understanding how the plumbing worked. She'd proudly told me all about what she'd learned, her eyes bright with excitement. "Maybe you can tell Grandpa about helping Dad today," I suggested, trying to give her something positive to focus on. My father had been a handy person before arthritis limited his mobility. She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "He won't care, Mom. Her words stung because I knew she was right. My father was as dismissive as my mother, just quieter about it. He'd retreat behind his newspaper or television program, barely engaging with Emma unless it was to ask her to pass the salt or turn down her music. When we entered the house, the smell of pot roast and freshly baked rolls filled the air. Lily and Noah were already there. Noah, 13 and already taller than Emma, was showing my parents something on his phone, and they were laughing together. My mother's laugh, genuine and warm, was a sound rarely directed at anything Emma or I did or said. "Look who's here," my mother announced when she saw us, but her eyes were still on Noah. Come in, dinner's almost ready." She was wearing a new blouse, light blue with delicate embroidery, and her silver hair was perfectly styled. My mother had always taken pride in her appearance. I noticed shopping bags on the cream-colored couch, the expensive kind from the upscale mall across town. The tissue paper peeking out from the top suggested recent purchases. Mom saw me looking and said, "Oh, we took Lily and Noah shopping this morning. Just a little treat." Her smile was casual, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to take my cousin and her son shopping, but not to include my daughter or me. Emma's eyes flickered to the bags, then back to the floor. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one I'd had my entire childhood when I realized I wasn't going to measure up again. The one that appeared when my mother would take my cousins for ice cream, but tell me I needed to watch my weight. The knot that formed when she'd praise other children in front of me, then criticize me in private. "Dinner's ready," my mother called from the dining room. The table was set beautifully with her good china and crystal glasses, another sign that this dinner was supposed to be special. We took our seats around the large oak table, Emma sitting between Mark and me. Dinner was my mother's famous pot roast with all the fixings, tender carrots, roasted potatoes, homemade rolls, and a garden salad with her special vinaigrette. The conversation flowed around us, mostly focused on Noah's soccer team and Lily's new promotion at the marketing firm where she worked. "They're talking about making me department head by the end of the year," Lily said, tucking a strand of her perfectly highlighted hair behind her ear. "That's wonderful, dear," my mother exclaimed, reaching across the table to squeeze Lily's hand. "I always knew you were destined for great things." I pushed my pot roast around my plate, remembering how my mother had barely acknowledged my own promotion 3 years ago. "That's nice," she'd said when I told her I'd been made senior project manager. "I hope it doesn't mean less time with Emma. Children need their mothers, you know." When Emma mentioned her upcoming school play, her voice tentative but proud, my mother cut her off. "That's nice, dear. Noah, tell us more about your soccer scholarship prospects." I saw Emma's face fall, and I felt anger bubble up inside me, the kind that starts as a small ember, but threatens to become a wildfire if fueled. "Mom, Emma's playing the lead in the school play. It's a big deal." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Of course it is. Now, who wants dessert?" I opened my mouth to press the issue, but Mark gently touched my arm under the table, his signal that maybe this wasn't the hill to die on. I swallowed my words and forced a smile for Emma's benefit when she glanced my way. My mother brought out an apple pie with vanilla ice cream for dessert. As she served each person, she made sure to give Noah an extra large scoop of ice cream. "Growing boys need their energy," she said with a wink. After dessert, when we were all still seated around the table, my mother clasped her hands together with an excitement I rarely saw directed at me or Emma. "I have a little something for everyone," she announced, getting up from the table with a theatrical flourish. She returned with the shopping bags I'd seen earlier. "Just some things I picked up while we were out today. Nothing extravagant. But I saw these items and thought of each of you." The anticipation around the table was palpable. Even my father, usually stoic and uninterested, perked up. My mother had always been good at giving gifts when she wanted to. Thoughtful, personal items that showed she'd been paying attention to your interests and desires. It was one of her few maternal qualities that I'd always appreciated, even if her gifts to me often came with subtle criticism. "This blouse will help hide your problem areas," Or, "This book might help you be more organized." She handed a bag to my father first, a new fishing hat he'd been eyeing, with special UV protection for his bald spot. His face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Thanks, Evelyn. This is perfect for the fishing trip next month." Then Lily got a designer scarf in vibrant blues and greens that made her squeal with delight. "Oh my God, Aunt Evelyn, this is gorgeous. It matches my new blazer perfectly." Noah received the latest video game he'd been talking about, along with a gift card for downloadable content. "Awesome. Thanks, Grandma," he exclaimed, immediately turning the case over to read the back. Mark was given a nice bottle of bourbon, the expensive kind he'd mentioned enjoying when we'd gone out for his birthday last year. "Thank you, Evelyn. This is very thoughtful," he said, examining the label with appreciation. Emma sat up straight, her eyes bright with anticipation. I watched her, hoping, praying, that my mother had remembered her too. Emma's birthday was coming up in a few weeks. Maybe this was an early gift. She'd been talking about a particular art set she'd seen at the craft store, with professional-grade colored pencils and a sketching pad. Emma loved to draw, spending hours creating detailed illustrations of animals and fantasy landscapes. But after handing Mark his gift, my mother sat back down. "Well, that was fun," she said, reaching for her wine glass as if the gift-giving was complete. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma looked around the table, waiting for her turn. When it became clear that no gift was coming, tears welled up in her eyes. "Grandma," she said in a small voice, "did you forget mine?" My mother looked at her with cold eyes that I recognized all too well, the look she gave when she thought someone was being unreasonable or demanding. "Oh, Emma, I didn't see anything that seemed right for you today." Emma's lower lip trembled, and a tear slid down her cheek. She tried to wipe it away quickly, but everyone had noticed. "Emma, don't cry," Lily said awkwardly. "It's just a little shopping trip. I'm sure Grandma will get you something next time." But the tears kept coming silently. Emma wasn't throwing a tantrum or making a scene, just quietly crying in her seat, trying to be invisible. Her shoulders hunched forward as if she could disappear if she made herself small enough. That's when my mother said it, her voice casual but cutting. She should be used to it by now. The room went still. I froze, my hand halfway to my water glass. Mark's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing at my mother. My father suddenly became very interested in his napkin. Lily looked uncomfortable, while Noah seemed oblivious, already absorbed in reading the back of his video game case. "Used to what exactly?" Mark asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I could see the muscle in his jaw twitching, a sure sign he was angry but controlling it. My mother shrugged, taking a sip of her wine before answering. "Well, you know, not everything has to be about her all the time. Some children need to learn they can't always be the center of attention." I looked at my daughter's tear-stained face, and suddenly I was seeing myself at 12, at 15, at 18, always hoping for approval that never came, always feeling like I was somehow defective because my own mother couldn't seem to love me properly. I remembered crying in my bedroom after my mother missed my high school graduation because Lily had a dance recital the same day. I remembered how she'd forgotten my 20th birthday entirely, but threw an elaborate party for my cousin's 18th the week before. That's when I realized it was never about Emma. It was always about me. My mother wasn't treating Emma differently because of anything Emma had done. She was treating her differently because she was my daughter. The pattern was repeating itself, passing down to the next generation, and I had been allowing it to happen. I could almost see the invisible thread connecting my childhood pain to Emma's tears now, a twisted inheritance I never wanted her to receive. Every dismissive comment, every forgotten achievement, every comparison to Noah. It was all so familiar because I'd lived it myself. I stood up so abruptly, my chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. The The sound cut through the tense silence like a physical thing. "Emma, Mark, we're leaving." "Melissa, don't be dramatic," my mother said, rolling her eyes. "She's fine. Look, she's already stopped crying." Indeed, Emma had gone silent, her face a mask of practiced indifference that broke my heart. How many times had she hidden her feelings like this? How many times had I missed it because I was too busy trying to keep the peace with my mother? How many times had I told myself that family was family, that my mother's behavior was just her way, that Emma needed to have a relationship with her grandparents regardless of how they treated her? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw myself reflected back. The careful blankness, the resigned acceptance, the way she'd already learned at 12 to swallow her hurt and disappoint to make everyone else comfortable. And in that moment, something inside me broke and reformed, stronger and more certain than before. "She's not fine," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "And neither am I." Mark stood up immediately, putting his hand on Emma's shoulder. His eyes met mine, and I saw understanding and support there. "Come on, kiddo. Let's go," he said to Emma, his tone gentle but firm. "This is ridiculous," my mother huffed, setting her wine glass down with more force than necessary. "You're overreacting as usual." As usual. The words hit me like a slap. How many times had she dismissed my feelings with those exact words? How many times had I believed her? When I cried after being left out of a mother-daughter lunch with my aunts and cousins. When I expressed hurt that she'd missed my piano recital. When I told her, at 16, that her constant criticism was making me anxious and insecure. "You're overreacting, Melissa. You're too sensitive. You make everything about you." "No, Mom. For once, I'm reacting exactly as I should have years ago." My voice was quiet but steady, with a certainty I rarely felt around my mother. I turned to Emma, whose eyes were wide with surprise. "Honey, go wait in the car with Dad for a minute. I need to talk to Grandma alone." Emma looked up at me with those wide eyes, surprised by my tone. In that moment, I realized she'd never seen me stand up to my mother before. What kind of example had I been setting for her? That it was okay to be treated as less than? That family could hurt you, and you should just accept it. She nodded and left with Mark, who gave my shoulder a supportive squeeze as they passed. My father and Lily exchanged uncomfortable glances, while Noah seemed absorbed in his new video game, thumbs already working the case open. After they were gone, I turned back to my mother. She was sitting with perfect posture, her expression a mixture of annoyance and confusion, as if she couldn't fathom why I was making such a scene. "I want you to listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once," I began, my hands flat on the table to steady myself. "What you just did to Emma is what you've been doing to me my entire life, making me feel less than, making me feel unworthy of the same love and attention you give to others." "That's absurd," my mother scoffed, her eyes flashing defensively. "I've always treated you well. You've never wanted for anything. We gave you a good home, an education, everything you needed. Accept your approval, accept your unconditional love." My voice cracked, but I pressed on. The dam had broken, and years of unspoken hurt came flooding out. "Do you know how many times I cried myself to sleep as a child, because nothing I did was ever good enough for you? Do you know how many achievements I stopped sharing, because I knew you'd find some way to diminish them?" My mother's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "You always were prone to exaggeration." "Am I exaggerating now?" I asked, gesturing to the empty chair where Emma had been sitting. "You bought gifts for everyone but her. You dismissed her excitement about the school play. You've done this consistently since she was born, and I've been letting you because some part of me still hopes that if I'm good enough, patient enough, if I keep trying to please you, eventually you'll love me the way you love Lily or Noah." My father cleared his throat. "Melissa, I think you're being unfair to your mother. She's always wanted the best for you." I turned to him, feeling a fresh wave of disappointment. "And you've always stood by and let it happen, Dad. You've never once stepped in when Mom was being cruel or dismissive. Not to me, and not to Emma." He had the grace to look ashamed, his eyes dropping to the tablecloth. My mother's face hardened, her defensive posture becoming more pronounced. "So this is about jealousy? You're jealous of your cousin and a 12-year-old boy?" I shook my head, feeling strangely calm now that I was finally speaking my truth. The tension that had lived in my shoulders for decades seemed to be draining away with each word. "No, Mom. This is about patterns. This is about you consistently making Emma, and me, feel less valuable, less worthy of your attention and affection. And it stops today." "What's that supposed to mean?" my mother demanded, a hint of uncertainty creeping into her voice for the first time. "It means we won't be coming to these family dinners anymore. It means if you want to have a relationship with Emma and me, you need to think long and hard about how you treat us both." I stood up straighter, feeling the weight of years of silence lifting off me. "It means I'm finally setting boundaries that I should have set a long time ago." Lily, who had been watching this exchange with wide eyes, finally spoke up. "Melissa, I had no idea you felt this way. I'm sorry if I've ever contributed to..." I held up my hand, stopping her. "This isn't about you, Lily. You've always been kind to Emma. This is between me and my parents." My father finally spoke up again, his voice lacking its usual authority. "Melissa, don't you think you're being a bit harsh? Your mother didn't mean anything by it." I looked at him sadly, remembering all the times I'd sought his protection from my mother's coldness, only to be met with passivity. "That's the problem, Dad. She never means anything by it. She just does it, over and over, and everyone excuses it or ignores it, including me. Well, not anymore." I turned back to my mother, whose face had gone from indignant to shocked. The color had drained from her cheeks, and for a moment, she looked older, vulnerable even. "I've spent my entire life trying to earn your love, Mom. I'm done. And I'm certainly not going to let my daughter spend her childhood doing the same thing." A heavy silence filled the room. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, marking the seconds of this momentous shift in our family dynamics. Part of me wanted my mother to apologize, to acknowledge the hurt she'd caused, to promise to do better. But the rational part of me knew that decades of behavior wouldn't change in an instant. "You'll regret this," my mother finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Family is family." "Yes, family is family," I agreed. "And that's why I'm doing this. Because Emma deserves better from her family than what I got from mine." With that, I walked out, my heart pounding, but my steps steady. The evening air was cool against my flushed face as I made my way down the porch steps to our car. Through the windshield, I could see Mark in the driver's seat, talking quietly to Emma. He looked up as I approached, a question in his eyes. I got in and took a deep breath, feeling both drained and somehow energized. The conflict I'd been avoiding for years had finally happened, and I'd survived it. More than survived. I'd stood my ground. "We're going to get ice cream," I announced, turning to look at Emma in the back seat. Emma's head perked up, confusion giving way to cautious hope. "Really? Really? And then we're going to talk about some changes." Mark started the car, reaching over to squeeze my hand as he pulled away from my parents' house. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded, surprised to realize it was true. "I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I actually think I am." We drove to Emma's favorite ice cream shop in silence. Colorful Scoops was a local place with homemade flavors and an old-fashioned soda fountain. The bell jingled cheerfully as we entered, and the sweet smell of waffle cones enveloped us. After we ordered, a mint chocolate chip for Emma, Rocky Road for Mark, and butter pecan for me. We sat down at a corner table near the window. The shop was nearly empty this late on a Sunday evening. Just a teenage couple sharing a sundae, and an elderly man reading a newspaper over coffee. Emma looked at me cautiously as she spooned ice cream into her mouth. "Am I in trouble?" she asked after a moment, her voice small. I reached for her hand across the table, noticing how her fingers were getting longer, more adult-like. Soon she'd be a teenager, then a young woman. The thought of her carrying the same insecurities I had carried made my heart ache. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Not today. Not ever." Then why was Grandma mean to me? Her question was direct, innocent in its simplicity, but loaded with hurt. I exchanged glances with Mark, who nodded encouragingly. We'd talked before about being honest with Emma, even when it was difficult. Children deserved the truth, even when that truth was messy or complicated. "Grandma has trouble showing love sometimes," I said carefully, choosing my words. "And that's not your fault. It's not because of anything you've done wrong." "Is it because she doesn't like me?" Emma's voice was small, and I felt a surge of protective anger. No child should ever have to wonder if they're worthy of love, especially from family. "No, Emma, it's not about you at all. It's about her." I squeezed her hand, feeling the fragility of her fingers in mine. "Grandma treats people differently based on things that have nothing to do with who they actually are or what they deserve." "She likes Noah better," Emma said matter-of-factly, licking her spoon. "And Aunt Lily." The simple truth of her statement broke my heart. Yes, she does show them more affection. But that says more about Grandma than it does about you or Noah or Aunt Lily. Mark leaned forward. "Sometimes adults have their own issues that make it hard for them to be fair or kind. It's not right, but it happens." "Has she always been like that?" Emma asked, looking up at me with curious eyes. I nodded slowly. "Yes, she has. She was the same way with me when I was growing up." Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "With you? But you're her daughter." "I am. And I deserved better from her, just like you do." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "But I want you to know that from now on, things are going to be different. We're not going to put ourselves in situations where people make us feel bad about ourselves, even if those people are family." "So no more dinners at Grandma's?" she asked, sounding both relieved and sad. "Not for a while," I confirmed. "Not until Grandma can understand why what she did was hurtful." Mark jumped in. "And Emma, we want you to know that it's okay to tell us when someone makes you feel bad, even if it's family. Especially if it's family." Emma nodded slowly, processing this. She stirred her melting ice cream thoughtfully. I thought maybe if I was more like Noah, Grandma would like me better." My heart shattered at her words. How long had she been carrying this burden? How had I missed the signs? I remembered thinking the same thing about Lily when I was young. If only I was more outgoing, more confident, more accomplished, maybe then my mother would love me the way she loved her niece. "Emma," I said firmly, waiting until she looked up and met my eyes. "You are perfect exactly as you are. You don't need to be like anyone else. And anyone who can't see how amazing you are doesn't deserve to be a big part of your life." She looked up at me, searching my face. "Even if it's Grandma?" "Even if it's Grandma," I confirmed, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "Your mom's right," Mark added. "And you know what? I think Grandma is missing out on knowing what an incredible person you are." A small smile tugged at Emma's lips. "I am pretty cool," she said, with a hint of her usual confidence. I laughed, relief flooding through me at this glimpse of my daughter's resilient spirit. "The coolest. Way cooler than I was at your age. Definitely cooler than your dad," Mark joked, making Emma giggle. The rest of our ice cream outing was lighter, with Emma telling us more about the school play and her role as the lead. Her enthusiasm as she described the costumes and the songs she'd get to perform reminded me of why this confrontation with my mother had been necessary. Emma deserved to shine without having her light dimmed by anyone, especially not by the people who should be her biggest supporters. That night, after Emma went to bed, Mark and I stayed up talking in our bedroom, voices low so she wouldn't overhear. I sat cross-legged on our bed while Mark leaned against the headboard, his reading glasses perched on his nose even though he wasn't reading anything. I told him about my childhood, about always feeling like I was somehow lacking in my mother's eyes. I shared memories I'd never fully articulated before. The time my mother returned a painting I'd made her because the colors didn't match her decor. The way she'd introduced me to her friends as my daughter, she's not as outgoing as her cousin Lily. The Christmas she gave Lily a beautiful journal and me a diet book. I cried for the little girl I had been, always trying so hard to win love that should have been freely given. And I cried for Emma, who had already started down the same painful path. I can't believe I let it go on so long, I said, wiping my eyes with the sleeve of my nightshirt. I can't believe I let her do the same thing to Emma. Mark put his arm around me, pulling me close. His steady presence had always been my anchor. You were trying to maintain a relationship with your parents. That's natural, but I'm proud of you for standing up today. I should have done it years ago, I said. Maybe. But you did it now, and that's what matters. He kissed the top of my head. You know, I've wanted to say something to your mother so many times over the years. The way she treats you and Emma has always made my blood boil. Why didn't you? I asked, curious rather than accusatory. He sighed. Because it wasn't my battle to fight. It had to come from you, when you were ready. I nodded, understanding. This confrontation with my mother had been building for decades. It couldn't have happened before I was ready to truly see the pattern for what it was, and to break it. Do you think she'll ever change? I asked, not sure what answer I was hoping for. Mark considered this. People can change, but they have to want to. Your mother would have to acknowledge there's a problem first, and that might be the hardest part for her. I nodded, knowing he was right. My mother had spent a lifetime building her perspective, her way of relating to me, and now to Emma. Changing would require her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself. And if she doesn't change? I asked. Then we keep the boundaries you set today. Emma's emotional well-being comes first. So does yours. His tone was resolute, and I felt a surge of gratitude for having a partner who understood the importance of this stand I'd taken. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of constantly seeking my mother's approval, of subjecting Emma to the same treatment I'd endured, had been lifted. The sun streamed through our bedroom curtains, casting a warm glow across the floor. Over breakfast, pancakes shaped like animals, a Sunday tradition in our house, I asked Emma what she wanted to do that day, just the three of us. Can we go to the science museum? She asked hesitantly, as if worried I might dismiss the idea. The new space exhibit had opened last month, but we hadn't found the time to go yet. Absolutely, I said with genuine enthusiasm. I've been wanting to see the new space exhibit. And can we get lunch at that place with the amazing milkshakes? She asked, growing bolder. The Shake Shack, definitely, Mark agreed, already clearing the breakfast dishes. As we got ready to leave, my phone rang. I checked the screen and felt my stomach tighten. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. You don't have to answer, Mark said softly, noticing my hesitation. But I did. This was part of setting healthy boundaries, facing the conversation rather than avoiding it. Hello? Melissa, my mother said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. About yesterday? Yes, I prompted, bracing myself for excuses or accusations. I've been thinking about what you said, About patterns. She paused, and I could hear her taking a breath. I don't agree with everything, but I never meant to make Emma feel that way. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was something. A crack in the wall she'd built between us, an acknowledgement, however small, that there might be some validity to what I'd said. I know you didn't, Mom, but intention doesn't change the impact. Emma deserves better. I deserved better. My voice was calm, factual, rather than accusatory. There was a long silence. I could almost see her sitting in her immaculate living room, wrestling with decades of ingrained behavior. Finally, she spoke. What can I do? The question surprised me. It was more vulnerable than anything I'd heard from my mother in years. I closed my eyes, feeling a complicated mix of emotions: hope, caution, a lifetime of disappointment, and the faint possibility of change. I don't have an easy answer for that, but recognizing there's a problem is a start. We need some time, though, and when we're ready to talk again, it needs to be different. Different how? She asked, a defensive edge creeping back into her voice. Equal treatment, respect, genuine interest in who Emma is, not who you think she should be. I took a breath. The same for me. Another silence, this one tenser. I'll think about what you've said. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for, but it was more than I'd expected. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for change. Not overnight, not completely, but something. After we hung up, I stood in the hallway for a moment, processing the conversation. Part of me wanted to analyze every word, to look for hidden meanings or traps. But another part, a stronger part, knew that I'd already done the hardest thing. I'd drawn a line and shown Emma that she was worth standing up for, that I was worth standing up for. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, dressed and ready for our museum trip. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she'd chosen her favorite NASA t-shirt, appropriate for the space exhibit. "Was that Grandma?" she asked, her expression cautious. I nodded. It was. She's thinking about what happened yesterday. Is she mad at me? The vulnerability in her question made my heart ache. No, sweetheart. She's not mad. And neither am I. We're just figuring some things out. I smiled up at her, letting my love for her shine through. Now, are you ready to see some dinosaurs? Her face lit up, worries momentarily forgotten. And the space exhibit. And the space exhibit, I agreed, holding out my hand. As she bounded down the stairs and took it, I made a silent promise to her and to myself. The cycle of conditional love and approval in our family was ending with me. Emma would grow up knowing her worth wasn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. For the first time in my life, I felt truly strong. Not because I'd finally won my mother's approval, but because I'd finally stopped needing it. And in that freedom, I'd found the courage to protect my daughter from the same pain I'd endured for so long. As we headed out the door toward a day of discovery and fun, I realized that sometimes the most important gifts we give our children aren't things at all. They're the boundaries we set to keep them safe, the examples we set by valuing ourselves, and the unconditional love that never makes them question if they're enough. The next few weeks were transformative for our family. We stuck to our decision about the family dinners, and I could already see changes in Emma. She laughed more freely, spoke more confidently about her interests, and seemed less anxious overall. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her small shoulders, the weight of constantly trying to earn approval that was never coming. Mark noticed it too. "She's different," he said one evening as we watched her practicing lines for the school play in the living room. "More like herself." I nodded, feeling both happy and a little sad. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. My phone buzzed with occasional texts from my mother, brief surface-level messages, asking how we were, sending an article she thought I might like, mentioning the weather. I responded politely but kept firm boundaries. When she suggested we put the unpleasantness behind us and come to dinner the following Sunday, I declined. "We're still taking some space," I texted back. "I'll let you know when we're ready." Lily called me a week after the confrontation. "I had no idea things were so bad between you and your mom," she said, her voice full of concern. "I feel terrible, like I somehow contributed." "You didn't know," I assured her. "And it's not your fault my mother plays favorites." "Noah misses Emma," she said. "Would it be okay if they still saw each other sometimes? Maybe the kids could hang out without the grandparent drama?" I agreed, and the following weekend, Noah came over to play video games with Emma. Watching them laugh together, I realized they were just kids, cousins who enjoyed each other's company when no adults were creating artificial competition between them. Emma's school play was scheduled for a Friday night 3 weeks after the dinner incident. She'd been working hard on her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, practicing her lines and songs every day. As the date approached, I could tell something was bothering her. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" I asked the night before the play, sitting on the edge of her bed during our nightly chat. She fiddled with her blanket, not meeting my eyes. "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming tomorrow?" The question caught me off guard. We hadn't discussed inviting my parents, and they hadn't asked about attending. "Would you want them to come?" She shrugged, her face conflicted. "I don't know. It's weird because they always go to Noah's games." My heart ached at her simple observation. "Do you want me to invite them?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, but it's okay if they say no." The maturity in her voice made me both proud and sad. "I'll call Grandma tomorrow morning." When I called my mother, I expected resistance or excuses. Instead, after a moment of silence, she simply said, "What time should we be there?" The school auditorium was packed the next evening. Mark and I arrived early to get good seats, saving spots for my parents just in case they actually showed up. 10 minutes before showtime, I spotted them walking down the aisle, my father leaning slightly on his cane. "You came," I said, genuinely surprised as they took their seats beside us. My mother nodded stiffly. "Of course. Emma invited us." The play was wonderful in that chaotic, endearing way of middle school productions. Emma shone as Dorothy, her clear voice carrying through the auditorium during "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." I found myself tearing up, overwhelmed with pride. I glanced at my mother during Emma's big solo and was stunned to see her eyes glistening too. She caught me looking and quickly dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. After the show, we waited in the lobby for Emma to change out of her costume. When she emerged, still wearing traces of her stage makeup, she ran straight to Mark and me for hugs. "You were amazing!" I exclaimed, holding her tight. "A star performance," Mark agreed, ruffling her hair. Then Emma noticed my parents standing awkwardly to the side. She hesitated for a moment before approaching them. "You came," she said, echoing my earlier words. My father smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. "Wouldn't have missed it for the world, kiddo." My mother stood rigidly, clutching her purse. Then, to my astonishment, she bent down slightly and opened her arms. "You were wonderful, Emma." Emma stepped into her grandmother's embrace cautiously, like approaching a wild animal that might bite. The hug was brief, a bit stiff, but real. As we walked to the parking lot, my mother fell into step beside me. "She has talent," she said quietly. "Yes, she does," I agreed. "Melissa," she began, then stopped, seemingly struggling for words. "I've been seeing someone, a therapist." I nearly tripped over my own feet in shock. My mother, seeing a therapist? The woman who had always dismissed therapy as nonsense for people too weak to handle their own problems? "Since when?" "Since you walked out of our dinner." She kept her eyes straight ahead. I didn't like what you said. I thought you were being unfair, but then I couldn't stop thinking about it. I didn't know how to respond. This was so far outside my expectations that I had no script ready. I don't know if I can change, she continued. Not completely, not overnight, but I'm trying to understand. We reached our cars, parked coincidentally next to each other. Emma and Mark were already getting into our sedan, while my father waited by their vehicle. That's good, Mom. She nodded once, decisively. Would you and Emma consider coming to Sunday dinner next week? Just dinner. No gifts, no comparisons. I hesitated, weighing the invitation. Was it too soon? Was I setting Emma up for more disappointment? But I also recognized the effort my mother was making, something I'd never seen before. I'll talk to Emma and Mark, I said finally. I'll let you know. On the drive home, I told Mark about my mother's revelation. He was as surprised as I had been. Therapy? Your mom? I know. It's hard to believe. Do you think she's serious about changing? I considered the question. I don't know. But the fact that she's trying means something. Later that night, I asked Emma how she'd feel about going to dinner at her grandparents' house again. She thought about it seriously. Would it be like before? She asked. I don't think so. Grandma says she's trying to change how she treats people. Emma nodded. Then I think we should give her another chance. That's what you do in families, right? Give people chances? Yes, I said, hugging her. But only if they're trying to do better, and we'll leave if anything makes you uncomfortable, okay? That Sunday, we returned to my parents' house. The atmosphere was different, tenser in some ways, but with an undercurrent of effort I'd never felt before. My mother had prepared a simpler meal, and Lily and Noah weren't there. It was just us. The conversation was awkward at times, with long silences and careful navigation around sensitive topics. But there were moments of genuine connection too. My father asked Emma about the play, and actually listened to her answer. My mother mentioned an art exhibit at the local museum that Emma might enjoy. As we were leaving, my mother handed Emma a small package. This isn't a bribe, she said quickly. It's just something I saw that made me think of you. Emma opened it to find a set of professional-grade colored pencils, exactly the ones she'd been wanting. She looked up at her grandmother with cautious delight. Thank you, Grandma. You're welcome, Emma. My mother hesitated, then added, Perhaps you could show me some of your drawings sometime. Emma nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. I'd like that. In the car, Emma carefully arranged her new pencils in rainbow order. Grandma was different today, she observed. Yes, she was trying, I agreed. Do you think she'll keep trying? I thought about my mother's therapy revelation, about the small but significant efforts she'd made today. I hope so, sweetheart. Change is hard, especially when you've been doing something the same way for a long time. But I think she wants to try. I'm glad we went, Emma decided, but I'm also glad we didn't go for a while before. Her simple wisdom struck me. You know what? I am too. The changes in our family dynamic didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks, moments when my mother slipped into old patterns, when the favoritism crept back in. But now, when it happened, I addressed it immediately instead of letting it slide. Sometimes that meant quietly taking my mother aside. Other times it meant ending a visit early. What surprised me most was that my mother, while often defensive initially, would later acknowledge her missteps. I'm working on it, became her refrain. Not an excuse, but a recognition that changing lifelong behaviors was a process. My father began to find his voice too. One Sunday, when my mother made a disparaging comment about Emma's new haircut, he spoke up. I think she looks lovely, he said firmly. The look of shock on my mother's face nearly made me laugh. Over the next few months, Emma's relationship with her grandparents evolved into something healthier. She remained cautious around my mother, but the fear of rejection that had shadowed her before was fading. She learned that it was okay to set her own boundaries, to say no to a hug if she didn't want one, to change the subject if a conversation made her uncomfortable. I found my own relationship with my parents changing too. I stopped seeking their approval and started approaching them as equals, adult to adult. This shift altered the power dynamic that had defined our interactions for decades. Sometimes it felt strange, even uncomfortable, but it was undeniably healthier. Lily and I grew closer through this process. I always thought your family was perfect, she confessed during a coffee date. Aunt Evelyn made it seem like you had everything. I laughed at the irony, and I always thought she loved you more than me. She was easier on me, Lily acknowledged, but I was just the niece who visited occasionally. You were her daughter, the one she projected all her expectations onto. This perspective helped me understand my mother better. Her perfectionism, her critical nature, they came from her own insecurities, her fear of failing as a parent. Understanding didn't excuse her behavior, but it made it easier to forgive. 6 months after that fateful dinner, Emma had another school milestone, a science fair where her project on renewable energy was competing for top prizes. This time, there was no question about whether to invite my parents. They asked about the date weeks in advance and arrived early, wearing proud grandparent buttons they'd had custom made. My mother approached Emma's display with genuine interest, asking questions about her methodology and conclusions. She didn't compare Emma to anyone else or diminish her achievements. When Emma won second place overall, my mother's congratulations were wholehearted and warm. Later, as we celebrated with ice cream, my mother pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for all of it. For making you feel like you were never enough. For doing the same to Emma." The words I'd waited a lifetime to hear caught me completely off guard. "Mom, I know it doesn't erase the past," she continued, "but I want you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm truly sorry." Tears stung my eyes. "Thank you for saying that." "I was raised the same way, you know," she said, her voice distant with memory. "My mother always preferred my sister. Nothing I did was right. I promised myself I'd be different, but instead, I just repeated the pattern. I thought of Emma, of the cycle I'd nearly allowed to continue. It stops with us, I said firmly. She nodded. It stops with us. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Mom, are you still mad at Grandma?" I considered how to answer honestly. "I'm not mad anymore, no. I'm sad about some things that happened in the past, but I'm hopeful about the future." "Me too," Emma said, yawning. "Grandma's trying really hard." "Yes, she is." I brushed her hair back from her forehead, marveling at the resilience of children. "And so are we all." Later, I sat on our back porch, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Mark joined me, handing me a glass of wine before settling into the chair beside mine. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. I smiled. I was just thinking about cycles, how easy it is to repeat patterns without even realizing it, and how hard it is to break them. "But you did break it," he reminded me. "That night at dinner, you changed everything." "We changed everything," I corrected him. "I couldn't have done it without you." He took my hand, our fingers intertwining comfortably. "Do you think your mom has really changed?" "I think she's changing," I said carefully. "And that's all we can really ask. She's trying, and so am I." The night air was cool, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from our garden. In the quiet, I reflected on how far we'd come in just 6 months. The hurt hadn't disappeared. Decades of emotional neglect don't heal overnight. But something new had taken root. Understanding, forgiveness, and the determination to do better. I thought of Emma, sleeping peacefully upstairs, growing into herself with a confidence I had never possessed at her age. By standing up for her, I had finally stood up for myself too. By protecting her from the patterns that had hurt me, I had begun to heal my own wounds. "You know," I said to Mark, "I think the most important gift my mother gave me was showing me exactly what kind of parent I didn't want to be." He chuckled softly. "And you're an amazing mother because of it." I sipped my wine, letting the truth of his words settle over me. The cycle of conditional love that had defined my childhood had been broken. Emma would grow up knowing she was enough, exactly as she was. And somehow, in teaching her that truth, I had finally learned to believe it about myself too. "We're all works in progress," I said, looking up at the star-filled sky. "All of us just trying to do better than the generation before." Mark squeezed my hand. "And succeeding." In that peaceful moment, I felt a sense of closure. Not perfect healing, life is rarely so tidy, but something close to peace. The pain of the past remained a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for change, the breaking point that allowed something healthier to grow in its place. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could give to Emma. Not protection from all hurt, but the courage to set boundaries, the strength to demand respect, and the wisdom to break harmful cycles before they claimed another generation.